I will now call the Finance and Responsible Governance Committee meeting to order. This meeting is being held in person and electronically in accordance with the Municipal Act. Today we don't have any public meetings or open delegations. However, we do have two presentations on the agenda this afternoon. The first presentation is from the Barrie Sports Hall of Fame. I would like to now call upon Tom Yules to deliver the presentation, and you have 10 minutes for your presentation. And I do see you have backup. Mr. Sample is sitting there with you too. There you go.
We just went through the induction ceremony last Wednesday, and we decided to co-produce the production, and Tim will deliver the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Chair, and council members, as well as city staff. We appreciate the opportunity to present to you today. Technology. About the hall. It was formed in 1984 by a group of city residents, councillors, Director of Parks. 60th year anniversary of the hall. It's located at the Allendale Rec Center, for those of you that haven't been to the Rec Center. We recognize the contributions of men and women in the community who have contributed to the well-being of sport and recreation and have represented Barrie in an exemplary manner. Factors that the hall represent, it's art, heritage, culture, and sport. So the paintings, as an example, are done by original artists. The heritage of sport in our city, the culture of sport and the contribution to the community, and of course, sport itself. In the last year, we've done a lot of work. We presented to council quite a bit ago, but we've formed a new site committee to meet the demands of the space requirement we have at the hall. We've visited and researched and talked to over 20 sports halls. We re-established liaison with council, the mayor, director of recreation and culture, and councillors Morales and director Dan Bell have sitting on our committees, as well as councillor Negussi in the past. We just received approval to have satellite sites at Peggy Hill and East Bayfield. In fact, we got the letter of agreement understanding this afternoon, which is great, thanks to Mr. Bell. And we're a member of Tourism Barrie, and we've installed a hall section on the tourism kiosks. We've revamped our website, social media sites on Facebook and Instagram, involvement of the displays at the Bobby Rosenthal Film Festival. We've done displays at Chemfest, the Barn Burner, Probus Club and Rotary Club presentations, Kinsman. We've done 3 open-air Dunlop events and rededication of the Bobby Rosenthal plaque and flag raising. And a way to reduce the space being used, we've come up with a different sizing on our paintings to try to help our near problem of space to put up our pictures. And we had a recent Olympic display at City Hall, and we took part in the flag raising ceremony for Bobby Rosenthal Week at City Hall. We've formed a 40th anniversary fundraising dinner committee, which I happen to be the chair of. I don't know, I kind of got sucked into that one, but anyway, I'm doing it. And we raised $5,000 for new site projects and $2,500 for operations at the Barn Burner. And for the first time, we've just received a grant to help us with the signage at Allendale and some of our display cabinets. And that's just happened in the last few days. Challenges. We're growing out of space at Allendale. We're having difficulty surviving for our operational needs. Difficulty finding sponsors to offset our annual operation costs of about $30,000 a year. and we're having difficulty attracting new board members with business acumen.
You might want to just move to your next slide, because I think you're talking about your
Oh,
next
I'm
slide.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Semple. Just wanted to keep you on
Oh,
track
I'm
there.
old, you know, not used to all these things. Anyway, attracting new board members with business acumen and finding a new home to display artifacts and paintings and a 5,000 foot requirement. And expanding our community social awareness program, expanding our community presence, and getting buy-in from the sport community. Our revenue in 2023 was about $28,620, but there was a heavily big item that we got, a donation of $10,000 from one of our inductees. It kind of offsets some of the numbers there. And our budget for 2024 is $29,800. That includes trying to get and pay for our paintings and types of things like that. So as an example, our 23 budget was $30,150, included all the items that are there that we can address. The actual ended up being $19,794, and the reason for that is we got delayed in getting approval on our charitable status, getting our letter of agreement and our expansion, which brought on audit and legal fees and insurance fees that we had to address, signage, as well as display cabinets for Peggy Hill and East Bayfield. Our capital budget, which we're trying to grow in order that if in the day that we do get a approval to go ahead for a new site or expand ourselves at Allendale, is basically the barn burner's been kind enough to give us $5,000 each of the years 23 and 24, and we got some seed money for the committee and the capital budget from the actual hall. What are we seeking? First and foremost, we'd like to be recognized and treated as the same as the culture, arts, and performing arts are in the community. A continued flow of operational costs each year to allow us to survive, and plus the inflation per the government guidelines each year. That request is $30,000. Our new charitable status creates additional costs, legal, audit, financial, and insurance, and the city to put this in their annual budget from this point on. A continued positive relationship with a member of council and Parks and Culture on our board and our new site committees, and to include the hall needs in the Saddleland Center or add Allendale renovations budget to allow for the 5,000 square feet of space. Also, to allow opportunities for the hall to apply for grants for special projects such as summer students. Right now, the criteria is written where we don't qualify for most of the grants, and we've been unsuccessful when we've applied over the years. This one we just received is the first one, I believe, that we've ever received in my time with the hall. So that's very positive, and we're thankful for that. Lost my spot. Fund the outside signage at Allendale, which this grant's going to help us with, and continue the insurance coverage for Allendale and the satellite centers. We've put some other things in here that we're working on with our counselor and Mr. Bell. Access to the meeting rooms, we're looking, so we did our induction at Allendale this year, and we were asking for us not to be charged for that, to celebrate what we're performing in the community. Access to the city IT network and equipment to have websites, access to the community in all public spaces and community centers, standalone halls, and city hall. Raise the exposure of the hall by working with various departments of the city, such as economic development, cultural, heritage, arts, tourism, recreation, sports tourism. Equitable representation as arts and culture get in terms of funding and staffing. McClure Art Center is an example. Change in the sport grant criteria so it'll allow us to apply for things. Funding for the summer student research, access possibly to the MAT funding, fixed percentage, and access to city facility rental fees, fixed percentage of each sports rental facility. Thank you for your time. I just would like to remind everybody that our 40th anniversary dinner, which will be celebrating Barrie's sports heroes, and our induction ceremony will be next October 1st, 2025 at Liberty North. And I open the floor to any questions that we might be able to answer.
Great. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for the work that you do in the community, because I know both of you gentlemen are volunteers in ensuring that the Sports Hall of Fame continues on and grows as we grow as a city too. Now, do any members of committee have any questions? Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair Harvey. Just a quick question. You mentioned that you don't meet the criteria for grants and stuff. Is that the way the grant is written, or it's the way we recognize your organization?
I think it's the way it's written. It's just that we don't fit into, and Tom can explain this a little better than I can.
The criteria that was established was really aimed at participation, getting the community or getting sporting organizations to get more people involved and active in it. We took a risk and sort of pursued, we're a tangible or an offshoot of activity that comes into the facilities, either tournaments or sports, that we can celebrate that to outside visitors. The criteria, I believe, was addressed and is being addressed in the sports strategy presentation later on today. And like I say, we're thankful, certainly thankful that we got the grant, but it would be a little bit easier to try and direct those peripheral sporting organizations that may be able to enhance sport in the community in the future.
And they're based on attracting people to hotel rooms and bringing people in. The hall is a factor out there, but to be honest with you, we haven't done a really good job in putting ourselves out there, and we're trying to change that, and I think that's where it falls. But we have applied for a summer student grant, as an example, for a couple of times, and have not qualified because of the way it's written.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Congle.
Thank you, Chair Harvey, and thank you for the presentation. I think my first question, if I may, direct to staff, and if it's appropriate, maybe Mr. Bell, in the reference to, I think in your presentation, sir, you talked a bit about expanding the hall into the Peggy Hill Community Centre and East Bayfield Community Centre. Is there a timeline on that? Could you refresh my memory about how that's being implemented and when? And if that's a temporary or if that's a permanent?
Sure. Through you, Chair Harvey, to Councillor Kungle, the agreement in principle states that it would be a 5-year agreement to have ancillary displays in place at the East Bayfield Community Centre and the Peggy Hill Team Community Centre to expand the presence of the Hall of Fame throughout the city. The main displays would still be retained at the Allendale Recreation Centre, and the funding that the hall received through the Recreation and Sport Grant is designed to support the cost of the displays that would be used in those centres.
If I may follow up, I've got a couple of questions and I'll continue to direct them to Mr. Bell. Redirect me, please, Mr. Bell, if need be, just because I think they're more framed with city facilities at this point. I'm thinking about because they're located into city facilities, does that create a different relationship or opportunity around our sponsorship contract? Does that enable the Sports Hall of Fame to look at sponsorship, or does it restrict them around signage? Does that become now a City of Barrie situation around any type of sponsorship, whether that's supporting sponsorship access, or does it hinder it because they're now within a city facility?
Through you, Chair Harvey, to Councillor Kungle, I don't believe this agreement infringes on any of the naming rights that we have or could have in place at any of our facilities, because the intent of the displays is not to, is simply to promote the Hall of Fame.
Thank you, and I'm just trying to appreciate the situation. Did you want to add to that, sir?
Just if I may add, what it's going to do is it's going to give us additional exposure to the hall by the traffic that is in East Bayfield and Peggy Hill. You know the numbers better than I on that.
Yeah, the concept was really, in working with the Recreation Department, was to create increase the visitation. So we're going to go from about 700,000 up to 2 million with those three centers. But the idea was sort of highlight perhaps events or themed things. The space that has been allocated, maybe say a 20 by 10 foot wall that we'll be able to hang a few portraits and maybe direct the displays, the artifacts to that. And the intent was to sort of start rotating it through the city.
Thank you, Tom.
We accomplished some of that by doing our Olympic display, as you may have seen down in City Hall. And that was received very well by not only the hall members, but the public, that we were showing people another aspect of the hall. And we would be able to concentrate, for example, on Special Olympians in one building and maybe hockey players in another, and then rotate it every 6 months.
Thank you for that additional question through you, Chair Harvey. And I might go back to staff. I'll leave it general in case it gets more into finance. And I asked more of the question, well, I think it is wonderful that you're now in all three of those facilities. Just trying to clarify if it changes how you're seen when you're more tightly connected to a municipality. And some grants identify that if you're municipal specific, you might be restricted. But my understanding is, while we lovingly embrace better access and exposure to the Hall of Fame, that doesn't complicate their standing for grants because of the relationship to the municipality. Is that correct? Would they be deemed to be a municipal agent?
Well, through Chair Harvey to Councillor Kungle, they're a registered not-for-profit on their own standing right now. So yeah, with a facility use agreement in place to have the fixtures in our, so it's like a third-party relationship.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Bell. That's great. Just wanted to make sure that there wasn't anything there that then created a complication for grant access that wasn't there prior. I'm not sure if we're able to extend, if we haven't yet, any support. I think in some different opportunities, we've given direction to staff to support where possible, directing entities such as the Barrie Sports Hall of Fame to different grants that we might know are available. But that helps me to kind of look at what I might be aware of. I know the Legion has been able to access Ontario Trillium funding for display cases and other such things because they've had certain charitable status or status that makes them eligible for funding. So I'm not sure if you've looked at that. I know your grants kind of said zero up until this point of time around accessing city funding, but is that support that you also need around identifying eligible grants and or a student or someone to support grant writing for you?
And speaking of grants, we do recognize our charitable status only came through in July. So we recognize there are other opportunities out there. A matter of us to prepare the necessary reports. It was a challenge for us to go through that originally. And So we recognize that opportunity down the road. We recognize things like Trillium and a lot of federal grants. When we get into something like a build or a redefinition or a rebranding of the hall, that there may be something available.
Thank you, and I think I'll just close with a question so I can frame it that way, but to say, do you have an available description of the skill set you're looking for board members? And if you do, I would welcome you to circulate that to me or other members, so we may be able to help identify if there's skill sets you need, like a volunteer that is maybe savvy at grant writing, because that can be an intensive process, but to help you through some next steps around access to funding.
Yeah, again, this is part of our rebuilding with the department over the last few years to get us to a position where we know where the expertise is, as opposed to a volunteer-based group that is always asking or trying to find those individuals. We're happy to put together a little package of what the skill sets are and forward it to Mr. Bell, and circulate it accordingly of that skill set of individuals we're looking for.
To be quite honest, we've just been scrambling to survive. So Tom did the lead on the induction ceremony, and basically that's from June until October, and I've tried to concentrate on some other things. So we are strapped for people. We've been approaching some people, and in fact, we met with somebody today to try to encourage them to come on board. So we're hopeful that will happen.
Perfect. Thank you. And happy to support sustainability, especially for the Sports Hall of Fame, and help to pull some resources around you where possible. And then lastly, my just compliments to last week. I know many that were touched personally and at a family level around the induction ceremony, and that was very nicely done and got some great promotion. So thank you for all the work that went into that, and hopefully we can find you a sponsor too if you know you're a year out from a 40th anniversary dinner, and helping you prepare for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do any other members of committee have any questions? Just for members of committee at first. So I'm just going to jump in now with one question. I did notice, again, it was a very small amount, but your membership fee that was shown on the spreadsheet. How much are your memberships? Are they only for inductees, or what exactly are the memberships all about?
So the membership basically entitles one to attend the induction ceremony as well as nominate somebody. So an outside party cannot nominate somebody other than going through a member of the hall. We have, in our discussions with the various other halls, are trying to come up with the number. Today's number is $25 lifetime membership, which in today's world is not what it should be, and that's part of the goal of the hall to look at that over this year's period, to come up with an idea and a reasonable amount of money, because we want to encourage the community to be involved, and we don't want to be out there trying to rake the mother and father that have two kids in hockey or basketball or whatever with additional money. But there is a number of halls that have a higher rate, and that's one of the reviews that we've been doing.
Great, thank you. I will now open up the questions to non-members of committee. I'll just remind people that we do have a second presentation, and with the time that we're looking at, Councillor Harris.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Thank you, Chair Harvey, and thank you to both of you for the work you do to preserve our sporting history in our city. I'm just curious, on the just thinking about what you offer and how you present our inductees with the watercolors, and they're brilliant. Just observationally, it seems like every year you contribute to our public art in a very effective way. Has there ever been any indication that an application to the Public Art Fund could help fund the art that you put into our city every year?
I think the quick answer is no.
Okay.
But again, we're trying to expand our thinking process.
Yeah.
And with the help of Councillor Morales and Councillor Nguzi, they've introduced some ideas to us. It's a case of us coming to grips with it. And to be quite frank, the doers of the hall right now on the board on a daily basis are in front of you.
Gotcha.
And the others are helpers, and they're very good volunteers, but they get specific to an event, and there's a couple of gentlemen that do the fundraising for us.
Okay, thank you. And so, yeah, so just again, I think you contribute to public art every year. The public art display at Allendale is significant, and it's, I think, impressive, and maybe that could be a way to, I know public art community doesn't really want more competition. However, you are contributing mightily to our public art with the watercolors of the fabulous athletes that we honor each year. Also, just on that same theme, you contribute to our heritage. Every year you save a part of our heritage. Have you ever been able to receive money from Heritage Barrie and the Heritage Committee to be able to, again, honor and respect your continued contribution to our heritage?
I believe we did approach Councillor Reitma and did do a presentation there. That's part of being a 40-year-old organization. We got caught up with our laurels right up through to the pandemic, doing what we've always done and not really doing a good job of growing the business. Been a lot of comments about the memberships and these things. We're stuck by constitutions. If I had membership, if I had a strong enough board, we need to bring the organizational structure to the present, and that takes our constitution it requires AGMs, and it has to be approved by members. It has to be a year, throughout the course of the year, which I'm now. That's what I got trapped in when I started doing the charity. The registration process, and we had to change our aims and our purposes. So it really is, I guess, part of the structure and the support we're asking for is moving this 40-year-old organization, capturing it now and preserving it for the future with membership fees. If a membership fee, should there be a membership fees? It certainly started off as a fundraising to pay for the portraits back in 1985, but now those costs have escalated so much, we just haven't moved forward enough.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not on Heritage Barrie or on the Public Art Committee, but we have members around this horseshoe that are, so maybe they can take forward that opportunity. Again, the one certainty is that each year you will contribute to our heritage and to our public art, so hopefully that can provide maybe some certainty with those committees being able to support what you do. Maybe one final thought. You also contribute to the education of our sport history in a very big way with the displays, and they're fabulous. I'm wondering, and I see our wonderful folks from our library here, and maybe another good conversation to have as far as what they do to contribute to the education of our community as it relates to sport. And I'll just leave with one final thought as far as, we just had a Guns and Gangs presentation. I grew up in Barrie, played hockey here in Barrie. And our motto when I was a kid was to keep a kid out of hot water, put him on ice. So we know sport, as far as things that contribute to helping reduce guns and gangs. I know this is the pre, not the post. You're the post, the celebration of the career of an athlete. But sports, as far as definition and best practice and evidence, helps keep kids out of trouble. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
I'll go to Mayor Nuttall and then after Councillor Morales.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to report a conflict of interest for Councillor Harris, as he is actually in a picture inside the Sports Hall of Fame and failed to disclose that at the beginning of the meeting. No, I'm kidding about that, but he is actually there. I guess the question, because we have to put these into questions, is what you currently have now at Allendale, and then you're looking at the other facilities, East Bayfield, Peggy Hill, eventually Sadland. Is the goal to have it dispersed, or is the goal to have a single mainstay, or a little bit of both?
I think the answer is a little bit of both. Have a mainstay with satellite sites to draw people to the main area of viewing. As an example, Oshawa has 5,000 square feet, but they do things in the library. They do things at City Hall. They were looking at going into a couple of other facilities, and they're in that process too. So what we're doing here is we're actually leading some of these groups out there in the fact that we've had discussions with them and asked some pretty pointed questions on how they operate and do those things. And I'm happy to say that Tom's done a lot of work, and I have done a lot of work to gather that information and see what the other halls are doing. Like, in some locations, you have a standalone hall. In other locations, you have an Oshawa where the hall is right in the main facility, and Peterborough is the same thing. And Penetang, a small city of 9,000 people, have their hall in their arena, and it's a beautiful facility. And the next presentation that we have to council, I'll share some of those pictures with you. But the answer is yes, we gotta look at a permanent home and satellite sites as well as displays at other areas. The library is a good example. Oshawa does that. We haven't had a chance to talk to the library. We've talked to the Y about their new facility and suggested that maybe we could have displays in the Y. We also asked them if they would like to include us as the permanent site for the hall, but those discussions are ongoing.
In part of our discussion with Become a Charitable Organization, two components were critical. Number one was the instructional or the educational component. We don't do enough getting the message out there. Second one was, and I was quite surprised, was a museum, sort of like a museum, artifacts, the display of memorabilia was very highly recommended. I thought we would have gone more digital, interactive. Those are certainly components of it. So a major one facility with digital representation at each one of the centers or community centers. Your rotunda, someone at this council, the last time I was here, we went down there, and that black TV that sits up in the corner of the rotunda that's not being used could be running our websites. It could be the arts. It could be all those components that make Barrie great. And someone just goes onto the wall, touches a screen, and they got a menu up in front of them, and they can pull out what they're looking for or what they would like to see while they're waiting around.
Thank you.
Just to touch on that point, and again, this isn't a question, but it's more to highlight what you might want to have a look at too is what Tourism Barrie does in the community centers with those touch screens. Now, they're not cheap, but there may be something there that may be aligned with what you just spoke about. I'll go to Councillor Morales now.
Thank you, Chair Harvey. And
Sorry, just to respond on that, Mr. Chair, we are on the Tourism Barrie sites. We have a spot on the screen where people can go, but thank you, it was a good suggestion.
I'm on the board and I didn't even know. There you go. And I've even played with it and didn't realize there was Hall of Fame stuff there. Councillor Morales.
flattery will get you everywhere. I will try to be quick. I know you guys have been waiting months and months for this presentation, so I want to ask you what is important, but I'll keep it focused because I know we have people waiting. Sometimes and this is a question, but sometimes we have committees, in my experience, that have passionate members, but we run into quorum challenges. We run into deliverables challenges, meaning, great, there's lots of good discussion happening, but what do the committees send back? Or those challenges, and they happen all the time. That's not a reference to the people or those committees. That doesn't happen with the Barrie Sports Hall of Fame. And I want to say this, I've said this to you too before, and I want to say this to my colleagues. So because of that, there's a question at the end of this. Essentially, the big ones that stand out at me that you're asking for are stabilized funding, reconsideration on how you are viewed with the city's grant criteria, and potentially a percentage share, doesn't have to be a whole number necessarily, a percentage share of the MAT. So that's really what stands out at me. I know there's more than that. So what I've witnessed is that you guys put a lot of emphasis on the portraits, which 100%, Councillor Harris, you could not have been more accurate. They're works of art in themselves, and long-lasting quality ones. They're not wasteful, they are just classy. And I'm incredibly impressed by the two of you on how quickly, and not just because I mentioned it, you guys were already on this, how quickly you are embrace technology, whether it be QR codes, augmented galleries, digitization, boards, kind of kiosk interactive, or just display. You are all over that. There is no hesitation about we've never done that before, or we like our portraits. So are those the reasons that you are confident coming here to this committee and asking for stabilized funding?
I think it's a majority of the reasons. We've accomplished an awful lot in the last year, couple of years, but more so in the last year with the help of Councillor Negussi and yourself and Mr. Bell. And we've aggressively want the hall to have more visibility, and times are changing, so electronics, and we're putting the QR code on our paintings. We started this year with that, and we plan to go through all our paintings and put a QR code on it. Oops, sorry, and embrace technology as much as we can, but there's still that physical aspect of the paintings and the artifacts that we have to address.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I'll close with this, Chair Harvey. Usually I'm used, when I'm on committees or on really any initiative, I'm used to being the one that wants to go really quickly, and staff or my colleagues go slow down. There's processes or there's this and that. On this committee, this board, I'm the one having to tell them to slow down in a good way. Not because they're not doing it right, but because they're so passionate. They're like, hey, Sergio, did you get to that thing that we sent you? And it's an incredible energy. And, I'm going to embarrass you guys, but I'm going to do it because you deserve it. You two, the two of you, there's lots of good people behind the scenes. You are correct. But the two of you are extraordinary gentlemen of duty, humility, dedication, and integrity. And I actually wrote those out while you were presenting because it's true. Sometimes I hear that, like, back in the old days, that, the old family values or old community values, right? The good ones, the positive ones, that times have changed, et cetera. I now know what that means about those kind of old-fashioned personal values, because you two exemplified every time I meet you, every time I talk to you, and every time we discuss something, even if we completely disagree on an issue. So I just wanted to share that, members of council. I don't think I've said that about any other committee I've ever been on publicly. And that is the kind of people guiding this project. They have deliverables after a year. They're not discussing it still. They have the spoken hub model. And I think we're going to have some interesting conversations moving into the 2025 budget. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for the comments. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from non-members of committee?
If I could just add,
go ahead.
historical content here is getting older by the day.
That's not fair.
I'm not going to start asking numbers because I know that's only going to just make it get worse. Thank you for your presentation, and I will now call upon the second presentation, Lauren Jessup, to deliver the presentation, and you have 10 minutes, and this is the Barrie Public Library. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of committee. I'm thrilled to be here today to share the Barrie Public Library's progress on our key performance indicators. Hang on one second. How do I get my slides to show up? There they are.
He almost had you singing the national anthem.
I know. Well, maybe not. Okay, so thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to share the library's key performance indicators. I just want to say this exercise was an excellent opportunity for library management and the library board to enhance our measurements and introduce additional KPIs. While we've always measured library outputs like checkouts and visits and program attendance, this has really pushed us to deepen our metrics and measure more outcomes, like improved literacy rates and customer satisfaction. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through every KPI, but you do have them all laid out in your package, and I'm happy to answer any questions. But before I begin and really get into it, I want to just say how proud I am of my team for achieving these numbers. So library staff are doing amazing, innovative things that are driving usage, and it really shows in the results that you're about to see. To ensure that our stakeholders recognize the value and impact of the library, we are focusing on outreach, advocacy, increasing awareness, and ensuring that our programs highlight library collections. To measure our progress in these areas, we can look to the year-to-date numbers of visits to library locations. We've seen 7.3% more people through the doors than we did in 2023, which can be attributed both to growth as well as to successful marketing and outreach initiatives. Last year, we were successful in surpassing our goal of 10,000 new members, hitting over 12,000 by year end. New memberships this year are on track to meet or surpass this figure. And I'm really excited about this next measurement. This is a new metric that highlights the success of our summer reading club. This year, we asked parents if their child showed improved reading confidence at the end of the program, and 83% reported that they did, speaking to the success of the program in boosting early literacy and fighting the summer slide. Building awareness of library services and reaching new areas in Barrie helps support Council's priority to build a thriving community. Our program services, collections, and spaces are designed to help create a connected and strong community. The downtown library, for example, draws hundreds of residents to our downtown core every day. We also support a vibrant core through library events like the Barrie Dragon Boat Festival and Comic Fest, and by participating in events like Open Air Dunlop. Sending summer students out to city parks not only increases visibility of the library, but it also contributes to residents' enjoyment of the city's beaches and parks. This year, our staff engaged over 10,000 people in parks, on the beach, at local schools, and in our downtown core. Working with our partners, we have been focusing on engagement to connect the community to library services in their neighborhoods and online. Checkouts and renewals continue to rise, with an overall increase of 1.8% year-to-date. Having free access to literacy, learning, and leisure materials from the library keeps more money in residents' pockets during a challenging economy. We're also seeing increased interest in using the library for remote work, studying, and for community meetings. Online room booking and the conversion of some staff spaces to meeting rooms has made it easier and more convenient for individuals and groups to book spaces for work and study. Building connections with the business community is also important to us. To measure support from local entrepreneurs and job seekers, we're tracking use of related library resources. Use of business-related print collections and digital resources like Simply Analytics is at 14% over last year. We help our community make connections with each other, with library collections, with social services, and with opportunities to learn and grow. Through these connections, we help support a thriving and affordable community. For example, the library supports Council's equity, diversity, and inclusion goal by offering diverse collections that mirror the diversity in our community, and by offering programs that promote understanding and awareness of different cultures and traditions. A thriving community also includes a vibrant arts and culture scene. The library supports this goal in many ways, including being an annual venue for the Barrie Jazz and Blues Festival and currently hosting the Seeds to Sow exhibit displayed on the rooftop garden downtown. These and other initiatives help residents engage with one another and with our public spaces. For the last 5 years, we've focused our attention on systematic, scalable approaches, building a culture of excellence, and making our practices more sustainable. I'm happy to report that active users are up 17.6% over the same period in 2023, with more than 44,000 people checking out at least one physical item. We know that some households have one shared library card, so we also looked at the percentage of households that have a library membership. There are over 36,000 unique addresses in our patron database, representing 56.9% of households. To measure service excellence, we are also using a powerful business analytics tool called the Net Promoter Score. Since July, we've been asking patrons one simple question: how likely are you to recommend the Barrie Public Library to your family, friends, and colleagues? With a rating scale of 0, not likely, to 10, very likely, it allows us to gauge customer satisfaction in real time and on an ongoing basis. A score like this, approaching 80%, is considered excellent, so we're very thrilled with these initial results. Ensuring our relevance through responsible governance and service excellence saw us welcome an additional 10,000 new members so far this year, and this is on top of the over 12,000 we welcomed last year. Access to critical library services and new opportunities helps to build a thriving community. The library is a shared resource that all taxpayers contribute to. The more people that discover the value of a library card, the greater the return on investment. And if the items in our Library of Things collection, like pickleball kits and snowshoes, help people to find greater enjoyment in city parks and facilities, that improves the city's return on investment on those spaces as well. To keep our spaces accessible and free to access, we've focused attention on removing barriers and creating spaces that are welcoming for everyone. With a high cost of living, more residents are being forced to choose between essentials like groceries and having high-speed internet at home. This need is reflected in the increased usage of computers as well as increased Wi-Fi usage. To help measure success of our Community Navigator program supported by the County of Simcoe, the board adopted 2 KPIs. These measures include the number of referrals to social agencies the Community Navigator has made, as well as the number of incidents per 5,000 visits. When we set these KPIs back in May, the Community Navigator pilot had just launched, and we did set a goal to reduce the number of incidents that we see in our downtown library. What we have seen over the last few months is that the numbers are remaining largely stable. There are, however, many successes worth noting from this pilot, including a reduced security guard presence over the summer months, individuals gaining access to needed social supports, and staff feeling more supported. And as a community hub, our role is to direct people to the information that they need, and sometimes that means referring them to the appropriate social or community agency. Referrals counted here only includes those recorded by the Community Navigator. It doesn't include referrals from our Information Barrie database or those made by library staff. By extending access and removing barriers, we ensure we are creating a welcoming space for everyone as part of a thriving and safe community. For example, this past summer, we hosted a program called Conversations on the Green Bench. Library visitors were invited to sit and chat with residents from the Coleman Care Center on a bench at our Painswick branch. This heartwarming initiative was designed to bridge generations and foster meaningful conversations, aligning with Council's goal to create and foster programs and opportunities that support community wellness. Our strategic direction of culture focuses on the development and engagement of library staff. To measure this, we are looking at staff survey results, staff turnover, and how many staff seek out additional development opportunities. Our staff turnover rate from 2023 to now has remained stable. A portion of our turnover can be attributed to the number of students that we hire throughout the year for page and community engagement roles. And while all staff are required to take some annual training sessions, like health and safety, for example, many staff do seek to upgrade their skills. This next metric measures the percentage of staff who do more than the annual training that they're required to do. This is not something we have measured before, so 31% is our current baseline. By investing in our staff, we contribute to a thriving community and an affordable place to live while demonstrating responsible governance. For example, in the past year, our staff have been recognized both locally and internationally. Serena McGovern was named Children and Youth Librarian of the Year from the Ontario Library Association, and Chantal Boileau was a finalist in the Barrie Chamber of Commerce Women in Business Awards. This past summer, the library was also honored to receive the prestigious John Cotton Dana Award from the American Library Association. This award recognized library staff for outstanding strategic communications and public relations efforts during our 2023 membership campaign. Growing our membership means we can make our shared resources go further, showing excellent return on investment. Thank you very much for the opportunity to showcase the library's key performance indicators and the results from this year so far. We're thrilled with the success we've seen right across the board, and we're proud to help support the City of Barrie's strategic priorities and goals. It's clear that using data-driven decision-making has driven the growth of our membership and usage of library spaces, services, and collections. We look forward to continuing to work together to provide library services in the City of Barrie. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your presentation. And do any members of committee have any questions? Councillor Congle.
Thank you, Chair Harvey, and thank you for the presentation. Lauren, I've got a couple of questions, and while I know KPIs and this is supposed to be a high-level summary, there's a couple of pieces that stand out for me, and I just wanted to know where they were baked into this or where they fall in other strategies that I know that you have in place. And I'll begin with one, wanting to thank you, because I think it falls in many things from inclusion to culture to other aspects. But for those not aware, the Barrie Public Library is an annual staple stop with our Judges with Communities in Bloom. And so not only do you support the strategic directions of the city, but you also have embodied them, and you did a stellar job this year as you hosted judges from Hungary and Belgium, and that was highly regarded. And I'm looking at members of your team in the audience because it was remarkable about how you model a lot of that. So it's always been a welcoming place. On the piece tied to volunteers, I know your KPIs talk about staff, and I've had the good fortune of meeting and connecting with volunteers who talk about it from a high satisfaction, but I didn't know if that was something from an environment of where volunteers sometimes have high turnover. I know coming out of COVID, volunteers were paused, especially those that were driving books and hard copy materials to individuals that were isolated. Is that something where you've got a metric to volunteers, or you even need to measure that? Are you struggling with volunteer recruitment and retention, or how is that a KPI that you and the board are looking at?
Through you, Chair Harvey, to Councillor Kungle, we definitely keep very good track of the volunteers that we have and the number of hours that that they all contribute. I would say our volunteering is back up again since the pandemic. We're bringing in lots more people to help, whether it's from helping with programs to helping with the visiting library service, like you mentioned, volunteer and manning our cafe and at the downtown library. Volunteers are a key component, and I think it's a really good opportunity for people in the community to get involved with the library. And I would say at this point, we're not necessarily having trouble recruiting for volunteers. It's just, a matter of fitting people into the right places. And obviously we do a lot with the Barrie Dragon Boat Festival, bringing in volunteers for that event as well. We do focus a lot on bringing in youth volunteers so that they, the high school students can use the public library to gain their community service hours that they need for their graduation.
Okay, thank you. And then last question. I had the pleasure of using a laptop on site at the Painswick, I believe, site. And so I didn't know if that is still a resource and if that's tracked under your KPIs around your checkouts for physical and digital materials, or is that a different type of resource? And I wasn't sure if you're seeing that as kind of a high asset use that will continue, but I thought that was quite unique and handy.
Sure. Through you, Chair Harvey, to Councillor Kungle. The use of those lendable laptops would be included in the numbers for computer use. So in that KPI that shows computer use, as well as Wi-Fi usage, probably in both. And those laptops are available at Painswick and also at our Holly location and are really popular. Holly, in fact, doesn't even have space for standalone, like sit-down computers, so the laptops are it. But people seem to really like that. So.
Well, my compliments on your layout of the KPIs and the overview. Great strategy, very clear, and I think you're doing a fabulous job. I can't believe just the space access you've created. I think 136% increase in some of that usage. So thank you for being a very high-valued public asset.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of committee? Go ahead, Mayor Nuttall.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for the presentation, Lauren and team. And there's a few questions I wanted to ask about with regards to portions of the city. And we recently had the opportunity to have a conversation. So really working that conversation into what the reporting is showing. Are there parts of the city that you're seeing, or maybe you don't measure this, where you're not seeing the same type of pickup as other parts of the city, i.e. proximity to services in the south end versus the north end?
Yeah, through you, Chair Harvey, to Mayor Nuttall. So we can look at our patron database and look at postal codes. at the moment, it does require a fair bit of staff intervention in terms of mapping that all out. But I think it was last year, we did create a bit of a heat map to show where people are using the library and where they're not. And we do tend to direct some of our marketing materials to those areas where we know that there maybe isn't as much, we're not reaching those people in that neighborhood. As well as outreach gets directed to those neighborhoods where we don't have a location or where we're seeing that there may be fewer people who have a membership.
The follow-up would be, is there any programming at the library, and I'm now tying together two things, which is never a fair thing to do, but is there ever programming at the library that focuses on, at-risk youth? Or is it just, at large, and I know there's a lot of children's stuff, but that might be a different demographic.
Sure. Through you, Chair Harvey, to Mayor Nuttall. Actually, we were noted on the Bright Futures, one of the Bright Futures slides, and I would say that's probably the most specific in terms of looking at risk. Normally, our programs are for everyone, and it just depends if that's something that interests you, then you attend. But the programs through the Bright Futures, there was more of a direct, like a targeted demographic for those programs. So there were some that were held at the Lampman Lane Community Center, as well as one that I believe is ongoing now at the Allendale Rec Center, and those were directed so that we could try to reach kids who are a bit more at risk.
Okay. A final question. Would I be correct in assuming that the northwest part of the city would be one of those areas where we don't have a lot of pickup or participation?
Yes, I do think that's fair to say. Without a location in that part of the city, it is a little bit more difficult for people to get to us, especially if transportation is an issue and they can't access services in that part of town. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair Harvey. Thanks for the presentation and some of the baselines and stuff like that. Because this is a new exercise, I noticed the security interactions. It went up very, very minimal. Let's say it didn't. Would you believe, if you had been keeping track of that previous, that this would actually be a reduction with the new, because it went from like 5.91 to 5.95, which is, our margin of error, like it's the same. But if you maybe 4 or 5 years back, prior to introducing the coordinator, that maybe there would be a larger reduction, like maybe it'd have been in the 8-9% where you're starting to see the effects of that?
Yeah, through you, Chair Harvey, to Councillor Thompson. To be honest, we do have some of that data and could pull that number to go back a bit further. This KPI of incidents per 5,000 is definitely new for us. We had to calculate that. It was just a nice representation of the incidents, because we do want to note that it is still a very small percentage of the visits that we have that can become challenging, right? So we can certainly pull those numbers back a little bit further to see. I will say, though, that during the pandemic, things got a bit different in terms of things that were going on downtown due to other programs that were in place, et cetera. So if we could look at 2019 and see how it looks in terms of that, you're right. Looking at the difference between 2023 and 2024, it's literally like 8 or 9 incidents that make up that difference. It's not a lot. And I think maybe where we're seeing similarities in the numbers, they're similar, but the incidents are a bit different. So it's a little bit more nuanced than just looking at a number per 5,000. The incidents seem to be happening currently now more outside the building. So security they have more time to walk around the outside of the building and look for, people smoking, people, whatever, and move them along, and then they record that. So it's, I think, worth noting too that not all these incidents are extreme. Some of them we found drug paraphernalia outside and had to clean it up. So it's it's a good number. If we keep counting the same way, we can see a trend, but it is important to see that we are feeling a difference with the community navigator in place.
And maybe just to follow up, not to that, and thank you for that answer. On another thing, it looks like there was a 3.7% increase in new memberships. But I found that it was like checking out of and renewals of physical or digital materials at 1.8%. Like, if your numbers are going up and the materials, like, so you're in half, basically 4%, 2% kind of thing. Do you kind of have an explanation for that? Is it like, and another question with your membership, you know, they say in the average about 4% of all residents, like in every ward, kind of move. Like you get 4 new, like, are we monitoring people with memberships that have maybe moved out of province or something? Like, do you guys look at all memberships to see what are still active?
Yeah, through you, Chair Harvey, to Councillor Thompson. So every 4 years, we purge our patron database of anybody who hasn't used their card. So we're looking at people who may have moved away, they may have passed away, making sure that our database stays current so that we know that those people that are in there, they still live here. But we don't necessarily track movement within the city. Somebody can come in and change their home library from downtown to Painswick if they wanted to do that, if they moved, but that's just an administrative thing.
Would you contribute some of the, like the number there being half, that materials are getting more expensive, it's harder to get new material, where, you know, somebody was looking for a book, they've got it, but, you know, maybe another book, you haven't received it, or there's not enough digital copies? Do you think some of that is contributing to that number? Just, I found, you know, half, like new memberships to less, you know, product being removed.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think about that a little bit more if I can and report back. But I guess to your point, it is more expensive to buy materials. It is more, especially digital. Those are very expensive. And like we've probably talked about before, lots of limitations on our use of those digital materials, even though you would expect that you could use them as many times as you want, you can't. So we are limited to the licensing requirements on those, and it is quite expensive to buy them. So patrons do have to wait if they, you know, some things have a long holds list. We have made some changes in the last few years to allow people to access materials quicker by offering featured collections. So if it's more of a browsing collection, so you might get lucky and find something that is a bestseller and has a huge holds list. If you are inside the library browsing, it might be sitting there on the shelf. So we do keep some of those featured copies, featured collection copies, and they're not holdable. So that gives people a little bit more of a chance.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you.
And just before I move to non-members of committee, I'll jump in quickly. It is great to see that you've got another 12,000 members of the library, and obviously it's continually growing each year. Now, I was just kind of curious a little bit more about your summer reading program, because obviously 87% is a pretty darn good percentage if people are finding that it's had a positive effect on their kids' reading growth. But when I look online, it appears that the program is only online. Is it just online, or is it actually got like a bricks and mortar in-house where you're actually reading a book? Maybe if you just tell me a little bit about that, because I was kind of curious when I saw that it only appeared to be online.
Yeah, so for sure. So we have started using an app called Beanstack so that parents and kids can go online and track their reading. But they also come in and see our summer reading club students. They can talk to them about the books. They can access the prizes that are available in the library. There's also tons of programming that goes on as part of the Summer Reading Club, and that is in-house programming as well as outreach. Throughout the month of June, our summer students go out to as many schools as they can fit in and reach all of those kids with a presentation about the Summer Reading Club, encouraging them to participate. And sometimes it's in an assembly with all the kids at once, and sometimes they do smaller groups. But they promote that in June, and then throughout July and August, there's lots of things to engage the kids and to bring them into the library so that they can check out more books so that they can continue that reading journey.
Great. And the other one, I just want to follow up on one of the questions that Deputy Mayor Thompson had asked, and that was in regards to the incident numbers that are being posted per 5,000. Now, you had mentioned in one of your responses that an incident could be something as simple as smoking. So just kind of trying to get an idea, what do you deem as an incident? Because I'm wondering if maybe these numbers may look a little bit worse than what they truly are as to what I as a patron would deem as an incident. And then the other piece that would be interesting, and I don't expect you to have these numbers on the fly, would be that, because obviously you've mentioned downtown several times through your presentation and answers, would be how does the numbers appear if you were to separate your 3 branches and have it as the downtown opposed to the other branches? Because I would suspect there's probably very little incidents at the other 2 branches, if any at all, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely the community libraries see far fewer incidents, and if anything is recorded, it's usually more of a medical incident with a patron than it is anything else. But your first question about the incident, so we record anything that violates the library's patron code of conduct. So anything that is on there and patrons are doing it when they've been asked not to, let's say, then it does get recorded. And I will say sometimes if an incident is smoking, it could escalate into now that person is arguing and argumentative with the security guard, and that's when it gets to the point of being recorded as an incident.
Okay, great. Thank you. I know that rationale makes total sense. Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, and through you, I'll be short and sweet. I just want to say thank you. I know I was one of the people that wanted something like this. I think you've done a fantastic job. I think, outlining your KPIs, aligning with your strategic objectives, aligning it to the city's overall arching goals. I think it's phenomenal. I think you should reach out to OLA, the Ontario Library Association, and provide this to them. I think it would be fabulous if all the libraries across the province use this type of scorecard and template approach to actually look at comparisons across province. That would be a next step. But I think you've done a phenomenal job from a governance perspective and oversight. I think this is really helpful information. And not only that, the layout, I think the data you're collecting is actually really positive. Like the growth that you've seen, the net promoter score, I mean, that's a great score. Even the incidence is 5 per 5,000. I mean, it really puts it in perspective what we're dealing with down there. I mean, that to me was interesting. So kudos to you and the team. I hope that you find this helpful, and I hope your board finds this helpful as well, in management, because I think you've done a really, really great job here. So I appreciate the time and energy that went into this.
Thank you so much. That really means a lot. Yeah, we did kind of have fun doing this, to be honest. And it's going to be something that we will maintain. So, keeping that up with regular updates for our management team and regular updates for the board going forward, because it is helpful as we move along, for sure. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Harris.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Harvey, and through you. Great presentation. It's really neat to see the data and kind of wonder about it. And it makes you think about like other data and other collections. So I was curious, and certainly last year when you brought the idea of having a navigator, the pivot to the county made good sense, and they were here and robustly offered to do that. Just curious, and we've got these 2 numbers that I think relate to the navigator. Are those, I'm assuming, but I'll ask, I need to ask for clarification, are there other measures the county requires on that? So I figured there'd be more than, because it seems very broad when you mentioned could be smoking, could be this, but those weren't the issues that you were hoping to manage better with the navigator. So there's a more robust reporting on that, safe to say?
Yeah, through you, Chair Harvey, to Councillor Harris, yes. So we have sent, I think we're on 3 now, reports to the county that outline how we're meeting the outcomes that we said we would in terms of this this project. So the community navigator herself records a lot of data in terms of her interactions with patrons and the different things that she's helping them with. And we also have to report on our incident data, not only the types of incidents, but the time of day of incidents and the day of the week, and how many are occurring at certain times. And that did help us to identify when we would have the community navigator present in the library. So we are doing a lot of robust reporting and some more storytelling, let's say, in terms of how that role is helping people access services that they're looking for. That is also a component of the county reporting.
Okay, thank you. And did that person solely work out of the downtown library?
Yes, so she could go to Painswick or Hawley, but she does spend she spends all of her time currently at the downtown library. I think there's been the odd time where staff at one of the community libraries have called her to ask for some advice on, how to interact with somebody that's having a certain issue, but she spends all of her time downtown.
And just one follow-up question. Does the scheduling of that navigator, is it informed by the incidents when they happen? So if they happen between X and Y, that's when generally that person would be there?
Yeah, she has a schedule that she can rely on. She knows when she needs to be there. She works one evening and I think one Saturday a month. The rest of her time is spent during the day, which, to be honest, is generally when we have challenges arise, is during those daytime hours. So yes, when we selected those hours for her, it was recognizing when we are facing the most challenges.
I mean, maybe one more, Chair Lavery. And is there a thought that the county feels they've made a good investment and likely to continue?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to the county's decision, but conversations over the summer with the county have been positive.
Thank you. And just maybe a comment, but I don't know what a good metric would be on 5.91 to 5.95 incidents per 5,000, but I think we talk often about the safety of downtown, things that are done proactively, and our downtown library is safe. I'm going to suggest that 5 point whatever over 5,000, and knowing that in that calculation there's some very modest, maybe more proactive thoughts around an incident that are so really it's a very safe place to bring your family and to come and enjoy what the library has to offer. Is that safe to say?
That's safe to say, yes. I would say that's safe to say.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor Rietma.
Thank you, Chair Harvey, and I'd like to echo the comments that Councillor Hamilton made. I think it's a great report, and it's very interesting, and I hope it's very helpful for you as well. My question is kind of looking around the corner. What do you see as being the most challenging thing that you're going to encounter in the next year or two?
Through you, Councillor Harvey, to Councillor Rietma. Wow, that's a question I probably want to think about. But the biggest challenge, I mean, obviously the city is growing. There are multiple construction sites around the downtown library. So we are looking at continuing to grow the service in the community, whether that's growing what we offer in our current locations, but also looking towards future library locations in other parts of the city. So I think for us, that's going to be the challenge, is just making sure that the things that we're doing are scalable, they're sustainable, so that we can continue to grow with the city. Because lots of people are moving into the city and they have high expectations of what kinds of services they're going to get. I'm sure you all are aware of that. So we just need to make sure that we can continue to meet those expectations.
Great answer.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other members with questions? Great, thank you very much for your presentation. It's been very insightful, as a few members have mentioned, when it comes to really looking at the analytics and the positive impact that the library has on our community of all ages, not just our youth, when it comes to reading. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Take care.
And we don't have anything else further on our agenda. So this concludes the Finance and Responsible Governance Committee. This meeting is adjourned.